Okay, so the big question, right up here at the front. How did Escape to Witch Mountain change your life?
Well, yeah, I mean, you weren't kidding. You put the big question up front. Escaped Witch Mountain, and it still amazes me to this day when I think about it. Was literally a dream come true. It changed my world in many ways, because all of a sudden I was being recognized everywhere I was going. People were staring at me. It seemed like,
Well,
and
you're a
I got
huge Disney fan, and when we were kids, we would go. What was it like for Ike Eisenmann at this age to go to Disneyland?
oh my god, it was awesome. I got to go for free as many times as I wanted. I could get as many free tickets as I asked for once I'd done the movie. And then what happened, what was even more impactful and meaningful for me, was that within a week of shooting, Disney signed me to a 3-year contract.
From the heart of Hollywood, it's the Patrick Labyorteaux with Patrick Labyorteaux.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Tonight's episode, Ike Eisenmann.
Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Okay, so welcome. You know him as Tony from Witch Mountain movies, and also you've heard his voice literally more times than probably anyone else in this entire world. Please welcome child star extraordinaire Ike Eisenmann. Hey, Ike, how are you?
Hey man, I'm great. I'm great. I What a great introduction. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be on your show. I'm so glad you're doing it. You do such a great job with it. I really enjoy it.
Oh, thanks, man. Just to
Yeah.
set it up so people know where this conversation is coming from, Ike and I have known each other since we were kids. We've been trying to figure it out. Maybe we met I know I met Al. Al is your brother. Al's an actor
Yes.
or was an actor at the same time, just like my brother was an actor. And Al and I became really, really close friends. And so I would always hang out at your house and we would hang out together. I'd hang out with Al. But I don't really know where we met, but it was just sort of like maybe Herb Tannen because we had the same commercial agent
Oh,
and
maybe you were
our
with
mom
you.
started talking.
Oh, it could be. I just have this. I don't have a recollection of meeting, but I do remember a lot of time we spent together. You guys came over to our house. We came over. We went over to your house. It was,
Yeah.
it was somehow.
I remember going over to your house and watching Shogun, the miniseries
Oh my
with
god.
with your family.
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Yeah.
Wow. And boy, did I love that. That was a great show. What a great show.
Act 1, beginnings. Okay, so let's start here at the beginning because you've got a lot of great stories, and so that I can lay some of this foundation. Ike has written the most amazing book you will ever read about being a child actor. It's not out yet, but I'm telling you about it now because it's going to be essential to understand exactly what how this interview is based. Because I've read this book. He did such a good job at describing what the realities are of being a child actor. Like there are so many things that I recognize from my own experience in his book that when you get a chance to read it, understand that he's giving you, like a lot of people say, they're giving you the inside scoop, and it's just kind of telling on people. This is not
Yeah.
that. It's more about he did a version of what he remembers as a 10, 11, 12, 13, whatever age he was, how he remembered it. And it's amazing. And so
Thank you.
a lot of your life is tied around your relationship with your dad.
Yeah.
And your dad played this character, Cadet Don, on an early morning children's show on KTRK, Channel 13,
Yeah. Yeah.
out in Houston. And so it was like a kid's show. And so you were a kid and you would watch your dad on TV, right?
Yep.
So you're in Texas. What? I've never had that experience. What's that like when you're a kid and you see your dad on TV and then you see him come home?
It's incredibly surreal. I mean, I watched his show every day with my mother. He was on for 9 years, and it was a live show. 3 hours a day. I mean, it was long, like 2 to 3 hours. It was I only know that because going through some of his pictures and paperwork and all the stuff that he'd accumulated, I found one of his handwritten show schedule for one day, and it was just packed with stuff, packed with content, whether it was
Was it
cartoons
a
or
show that showed
interviews.
cartoons, or was it him
They
doing
did.
3 hours of
He did show
content?
cartoons. He did,
Uh-huh.
but his character Cadet Don was basically a pseudo astronaut, like a space flight person, because that was really big in Houston at the time. The gentleman
Yeah.
who created the show wanted to help promote NASA's Mission Control Center, which had just been built there. It had just started in the late 50s and early 60s, and it was just,
Houston, we have a problem is exactly what they're talking about.
That's it. They're talking to Houston in a building there somewhere. But so my father then had access to a lot of astronaut guests and people from NASA and whatever celebrities came through town. Chuck Connors was on his show. I think Pat Boone might have even been on his show one time. It was hugely popular. I mean, huge. My father was a major star in Houston, Texas. We literally could not go anywhere without people running up to him. And he did something so incredibly unique, and I don't remember where he got the idea for this. An aspect of his show that he would do, he did it once on a lark and then started doing it every day because it's like the fan mail just blasted the station. But he would do a little segment where he'd call out, he'd call out and he'd say, Patrick, it's your birthday today. We're so excited for you. And I just want you to know, if you go and you look in the utility closet by the kitchen, you'll find your present.
Oh my gosh.
Now, you can well imagine what happened after he did that once, and it was all fake. He made up fake names and just came up with this idea. Within a few days, the phone calls, the inundation of how do I get my child to be announced on your show? So he started a postcard writing thing where people could write in postcards, and they would just have to randomly select people because they got so much mail. They couldn't accommodate everyone. But that was so impactful that literally Dennis and Randy Quaid ended up meeting my father and, pardon my French, crapping themselves silly because they said, "You're Cadet Don. You're Cadet Don. I want you to know I found my present. I found my present." So he had announced their birthdays when they were kids in Houston.
Wow.
And so that's how far-reaching this local television show kind of had over the course of time. So he did a very entertaining show. It was very unique in a way, and he was very successful at it. And I was actually on. My brother and I were both on. Starting at the age of 2, I was on the first time, and he would do that on our birthdays every year. Have us on as a special guest to celebrate our birthdays. And I have actually a video clip of my appearance on it when I was 2 years old, because he had someone film me on the show as it was being shot, and all the presents I got and all of this stuff. So my I grew up with a very surreal and strange concept of what movies and TV shows were. They were real things with real people did this stuff, because I could watch him on the
Right.
TV, and then a few hours later he would come through the front door and start rehearsing and working on whatever kind of stuff he was going to do for the next day. And it was just
Did you
part
know that
of my
he was
life.
not a cadet? Or, I mean, at that age, did you know? Because he was going to work and then you'd see him at work
Yeah.
and you knew that there were cameras, but did you know that he was not an astronaut?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because his name
Okay.
was Albert Abel Eisenmann.
But Al didn't follow along. What happened when he decided to leave?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What happened when your dad decided to leave? What was Al's response, your brother?
Oh God, yeah. No, this was classic, and this was very, very real. And I love this story. My father decided to leave. We were going to move to California, and he was going to seek his, fame and fortune in Hollywood. And he hadn't told both of us yet. The decision had been made, the action carried out. But once my father made the announcement at the station, they had to find a replacement because they wanted the show to keep going. So they hired another actor who was going to take over for my father, and it was on the front page of the Houston Chronicle, the big newspaper in Houston. And my brother saw the picture, and he could either read well enough or figure it out that it said, "So and so is the new Cadet Don." And my brother thought we were getting a new father because he was the new Cadet Don. So he was screaming and tearing at the paper, screaming, "I don't want a new dad. I don't want a new dad." And we couldn't convince him that wasn't what was going on. It was just the TV show, and he wasn't going to be on the TV.
I love that
TV
story
show
because
anymore. We were getting a new
I
father.
knew.
So I mean,
I knew Al so well
hilarious.
that
yeah.
That's hysterical. Okay, so because
Yeah.
I mean, you've got such a rich, huge history here. So we're going to skip forward, but I just needed to set that stage because your father
Sure.
comes to. I'm gonna jump ahead here. He moves everyone to California. Your father wants to make it big in Hollywood because he's this big, huge star in Houston. But like a lot of people, when they come to Hollywood, it's a different world. There is 1,000 other people doing exactly the same thing, and it's just it's harder to, it's like the ability to get jobs here is not the same as anywhere else.
Yeah.
And so he runs into some issues with just not getting the work that he wants. And I'm gonna like condense this, but it's your story. I want you to fill it in. That as I knew him, he was always frustrated, which then turned to kind of an anger as well. So he was kind of an angry guy when I met him years later, frustrated that he wasn't being accommodated by the industry in the way that he felt that he should be. And I think that's very, you were mentioning, your embarrassment or your uncomfortableness of being recognized sometimes. And I think maybe some of that had to do with every time you were recognized, it might have been a slap to your father that he wasn't being recognized. And so that can be difficult.
Yeah.
And so you're in California now. You guys have moved to California. What was your experience of coming to California? Were you happy about it? Were you sad about it?
I was scared. I was 6 years old, so it was like we were leaving what I was used to and moving somewhere that I knew nothing about. So it was unsettling, but it ended up turning into an adventure because it was a 4-day drive to get to Los Angeles from Houston at the time. It took my mother, my brother, and my grandmother. She drove out with us because my father was already spending time in LA and trying to get things going as as our household truck, moving truck was coming out. And so the four of us drove out together. And then that sort of really turned it into an adventure because we saw all kinds of wonderful little tourist spots on the drive out, and got to hang out and see a lot of that stuff on our way. So we weren't in a big hurry. We really did turn it into a fun trip. But then it sort of came crashing down because my father, and I always think this is funny. We moved to Beverly Hills, which sounds hilarious. But the fact of the matter was that was the least expensive apartment my father could find for us to rent. It was like on the fringe edge of Beverly Hills. And it was just this rundown, it was just a terrible, terrible place. So I very quickly had to learn to live in a very compromised world from the, pretty nice, comfortable world we lived in Houston. And it was just all, Houston's still a big city, but I don't remember a lot of driving around Houston. It was like I was too young. We didn't do that much stuff within the city. Like all of a sudden now we're in LA and we're doing things and we're seeing all of it, and it was overwhelming in a lot of ways, and it took some getting used to for sure.
So when you get here, your dad it's all about dad. It's about his career. It's about all of those things. You're just a kid. You got a brother. You got a mom. Things are going around the normal scope of things.
Yeah.
How does it come around that you end up getting into the business at all?
Well, I the thing about Los Angeles, and I don't know if this is true to this day today or how long it lasted, but there was this very interesting little thing that happened in Hollywood families. Anybody who worked in the business, they would always put their kids into the business doing commercials, and it was always on the ostensibly to earn money for their college, like later in life. And that always sounded incredibly bizarre to me. It's like, okay, you're going to work as a kid so you can pay for your own college, and your family doesn't have to fork it over. I mean, but everybody did it. Everybody did it.
Yeah, when I read that
And
in your book, it was like that's exactly how we heard it. It's like, oh, you'll pay for your college, like it
yeah,
makes it okay.
yeah, like somehow that's the justification. And so just randomly one day, my father sits me down and he says, "Your mother and I have been talking, and we think you should, do commercials if that sounds interesting." And I had never, I mean, despite my closely held little dream about being a part of movies and TV and all of that, I'd never said anything about that to anyone. I kept it a secret. I didn't want, I just, I don't know why I did. I was just, because I was a really, really shy and introverted child. Um, and I just didn't talk about that kind of stuff very much. And my thinking was, that's my dad's world. It's not mine,
Right.
so I'm just going to leave it alone. And then he basically hands it to me on a silver platter. And I immediately said, yeah, I'd love to. And the rest was history. I mean, it just like, it really happened fast.
Was your dad with
My,
Herb Tannen? Is
he
that how you
was,
guys?
yep,
So
exactly.
let me give a little bit of background. So in the day, still today, but I mean, it was a much smaller town. So Herb Tannen and Associates was a guy named Herb Tannen, and then he had a lady there named Collie. And Collie was the lady who took care of all the kids. And my brother and I were at Herb Tannen, and you guys were at Herb Tannen. In fact, whenever we would go to the offices, we'd walk down the hall, and someone had placed all these stickers and buttons that said "I like Ike" all the way down the hallway.
Yeah,
And
that was
so,
a
like
very,
early on, I'm like, going, "Who's this Ike kid?"
yeah, I still have some of those buttons to this day. It was, and that's another thing about the business back then. Now you've got social media to increase your exposure and all of that kind of stuff. But for actors back then, they were constantly coming up with ways of staying on people's minds. And
Right.
there was a lot of postcard sending, gift sending, whatever. You take out ads in Variety and the Hollywood Reporter, saying, "I'm going to be on this next week," just to let them know that you're working and to remind them of you as much as you possibly can. So my dad came up with this scheme to do an "I like Ike" button, and he printed a whole slew of them and handed them out everywhere we went. And so literally I have a picture of one on my computer. I don't have it. No, I don't have it
No,
here.
you,
I
I
had.
demand all the memorabilia as soon as I mention it. Um, so, so Herb Tannen was like the big commercial person. There's a lot of them,
Right.
but like they were the biggest. And so you worked a lot, and it was just a mill of children doing commercials. I imagine the reason is that there's no other like you said, there's no social media, there's no anything. So back then, the advertising was commercials, local commercials, radio commercials, voiceovers. And
Yeah.
we, as kids, you'd go on 3 or 4 auditions a day. You'd maybe book 1 or 2 a month. And it was a busy, busy time. And
Yeah.
you, your brother, my brother, I think Collie said my brother booked 28 jobs in 1 month, which to this day is like, I can't imagine that statistic's correct,
Yeah. That
but I
sounds pretty
did know that
heavy.
he was. I think he was always working,
Yeah.
and you were as well. And it was at this time. Was it the very beginning that you became Little Sprout Green Little?
No, I didn't book that job until it was. I'm trying to think what the time frame was, because I think it was before I did Escape to Witch Mountain. I was 10 years old. So it was
Okay,
before that, and it lasted until I was 13, because I ended up growing up and as happens to us boys, my voice started changing and it was cracking in the middle of sessions, and so I had to I had to retire.
They could have made you a
I
castrato.
had to
You could have
retire
done the
from
job to
being
the
the green
day.
sprout, and it broke my heart because, man, you want to talk about fun stuff. My favorite work to do was always animation because I just loved the talent. I loved being a part of this whole other aspect of all of this stuff. We got to this playground that we had, at least that's how I saw it, because I had a
Yeah.
blast. But yeah, it was really disappointing, but that was a huge campaign. I mean, for me, huge, huge, huge. Yeah,
If
I
you're
loved
not
it.
old enough to remember it, there's ho ho ho, green giant, and there's a big
Giant,
giant
yeah.
green guy, and then he had a little. Was his name Green Sprout or just Sprout?
They
Little
call him the
Sprout. Little Sprout.
sprout. I don't know if you can see it right behind me. I've got
Oh, huh,
a
there you
gift
go.
from a friend, a lamp of the green sprout, and I've got one of those pop dolls of
Oh,
him as
sweet.
well. And my
And so
one
for
of my
years,
most
anytime you heard him, it was Ike.
yeah
And
yeah it
later on,
was.
we'll get to it. It's like anytime you heard anything in a movie, it's also Ike. So when you're doing these commercials, one of the things about that you talk about in the book, which I responded to and was like, wow, this is something no one really talks about. There was a professionalism that child actors had. You specifically talk about it in the book, that kid actors were expected to be basically perfect
Yeah,
because the older actors are the ones that have the emotions and the freakouts and they don't know their lines or whatever. But if you're a kid that doesn't know it, then you can easily be replaced. So if you were a
yeah.
working kid, you were always the one that knew exactly what to do. Can you talk a little bit about how you feel about that and how that became, because you seemed ultra professional at such a young age?
Well, it was deeply important to me. I wanted to do it, and I wanted to keep doing it. And it wasn't so much like as I picked up on a vibe that that's what was required of me. It was just innate kind of to my personality to I was just so damn grateful to be a part of it. I liked grown-ups more than I liked kids. I mean, I didn't socialize with kids, and this is not a me playing my miniature violin. I really didn't have many friends growing up. It's like I wanted to hang out with the grown-ups. I didn't want to be at the kids' table. I wanted to be at the grown-up table, even if I just listened. It didn't matter to me. So to make sure I continued to successfully be a part of that, I I listened to what people said. I did what I was told. I tried to be as perfect as I could all the time, and I actually developed a reputation for doing all my work in one take. Maybe not so much on commercials because they're far more demanding in so many different ways. But they do my coverage. I do it in one take. They'd say, let's do a second one for safety and we can move on. And I literally booked a guest spot on Fantasy Island, making that promise to the producers that I would do all of my scenes in one take because I was 17 years old. See, the thing, and the other thing is for everybody who doesn't completely understand what it's like to be a child actor, not only are you working 5 to 6 hours a day, but you have to do 3 hours of school in
Right.
between. Your breaks from working were going into the schoolroom doing your homework, and we had set teachers who are also welfare workers that looked after our well-being on set and all that kind of stuff. But under the age of 18, you're restricted to working a total of not. You can be on the clock for 9 hours and no more. There's no such thing as overtime for children, which I know you know. This is obviously for your audience.
Sure.
So the older you become as a teenager, the harder it is to get work because they don't want to hire you because you're restricted. They'd rather hire a 19-year-old who looks your age, and they don't have to do the whole school thing, which slows things down. So the producers at Fantasy Island thought, he's not 18 yet. We just don't think we can have him because it's just, it's going to eat up too much time. And, we got to get through the schedule. And I said to my agent at the time, I said, I promise here, I'll promise him this. I will do everything in one take, no matter what, and we'll fly through it. And they ended up hiring me. So now I show
And you
up
did it.
I did it. I freaking did it. And then one of my scenes with Ricardo Montalban, it was kind of emotional. It was an emotional scene, and there was a fair amount of dialogue, and we got through it. And they said, "Okay, great, let's turn around on Ricardo." And he said, "Whoa, wait a second. Why don't you give this young man another take? I mean, this is too much. Just let him do another take." So I ended up doing another take, and when he was on set, he was the boss. So whatever he said went. But
Sure.
so that sense of professionalism was somehow innately part of my personality, and I just picked up my clues. When I saw kids acting poor, not acting poorly, but misbehaving or anything like that, and then you never see them again, you start to
Right.
think, wow, yeah, that that could be me, and I don't want that to ever happen.
We'll be back after these messages. Hey there, my name is Patrick Labyorteaux, and I play an actor on TV. And I also have this acting school called Working Actors School. And what we do there is we teach people to act using Zoom. So you can take an acting class with me and with a person in Connecticut, in Florida, and San Diego all at the same time, thanks to the miracle of Zoom. And I'm very excited to announce that we have a brand new class called Adult Weekly Class. Now, what is that? Now, that's a class that'll meet every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, and you come in and you have an hour-long acting class with other students. It's very, very simple, very, very fun. So if you've ever wanted to be an actor or try it or just mess around, these classes are great. So the Adult Weekly Class is going to be every Wednesday at 5:30 Pacific. Now come and check it out. It's going to be really fun. Go to workingactorschool.com. Check out the website. You can sign up for the class there. If you need any other information, there's a phone number and an email on the website. You can get it there. And we would love to have you come and try. Talk to you soon. Act 2, Success.
The earliest dream I can remember, and I've never told this story before, so you're getting an exclusive here. When I was about 5 years old, I think, because that seems to make the most sense, I had a dream that I was sitting on my bed playing with some toy, and all of a sudden I heard thumping on the roof of our house. And I thought, what is that? And there was another thump. It was really loud. So I got out of bed, I ran through the house, opened the front door, and stepped outside. And this is where it's particularly fascinating for me. I literally did an astral projection of myself way up in the air, looking down at me, standing in the front door of my house. And when my parents stepped up behind me, we were all looking up. And over our house was this stream of giant seven dwarfs, like balloon type characters. It was the seven dwarfs, each and every one of them in all full color, and they were slowly but surely, one at a time, floating down and bouncing off the roof of our house, and then going off into the distance. And clearly it had such an emotional impact on me that I've never forgotten it. No. And two things about that are incredibly weird. First of all, how young I was to have such a vivid dream, that it's in color, which is not unusual, but fairly rare, and to astral project within the dream of yourself. We don't do that. Normally we dream, it's all first person POV. It's like a video game. Yeah. And this one, I was looking down, and I could see it was pitch black dark. You could see the whole house and watch these things go off into the sky. And of course, how do you interpret that? Obviously, I'd seen Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in the theaters. My grandmother used to take me to the movies all the time, and she always took me to Disney movies when I was really, really young. And so here, all this stuff is feeding into my brain, and I just was like desperate to be a part of this thing. So when I finally became an actor, I started doing commercials and I started doing television. And then, of course, one day it popped into my head, Disney's a studio, just like every other studio. So maybe I'll get an audition there. And I did have my first audition when I was probably, I was 10 years old. And I was over the moon excited about it. And I ended up meeting you and I know this, but Virginia Higgins, the children's casting director at Disney, went in and read for her. She was very complimentary, very happy to meet me, and I left, and I never heard another word. And I thought, man, this is really weird, because by that point, I was starting to book TV shows fairly regularly, and I got a lot of callbacks also. And I just thought, well, maybe I'll get a callback, at least something. But nothing. Then another audition came up, and another audition came up, and another one came up, and I kept going back, and I couldn't gain any traction there, and I had no idea what that was all about. And then one day, there was one more audition, and I was just like, I was feeling like I was practically wasting my time. It was a door I wasn't going to ever get through. And I went in, and it turned out to be for Escape Witch Mountain. And I didn't know, because one of the things Disney did, and this is my recollection, so it may not be 100% true. Excuse me. Every time I read for something at Disney, I never knew what it was. There was no title on the sides, on the script pages that they gave me, just characters, which one I was supposed to read, a basic setup for the situation, and then we'd go in and read. So I didn't even know it was for Escape to Witch Mountain until after that audition. And quite literally, almost 3 days later, so within that week, I was called in to do a screen test. And I didn't really know what a screen test was, because my agent called it a callback, but it's like a callback on camera. That was kind of how it was put to me. And I didn't realize these things were even done. But there was a day of screen tests at Disney, and it was, interestingly enough, done on a Saturday, so that we didn't have to go to school, or all of that stuff didn't apply. But Virginia was there. I saw the setup. Everyone was milling about, getting ready to shoot. I was on the list first, and all of a sudden Virginia turns around and says, "This is Kim Richards. She's going to play your sister." And I got to tell you, you talk about freaky. I looked at her, and I immediately, in my mind, I said, "Oh, this girl could totally be my sister. We look just alike." So then we did the screen test. Within a few more days, we were cast, and the rest is history. And it was overwhelming to me, and it still is overwhelming to me, because that was so incredibly important, and to me, to work for them. So
Yeah.
all of a sudden, getting to work on this movie, and it's like, what better Disney movie could a kid get to co-star in but Escape to Witch Mountain, with all the effects and the animals and the chases and the,
Well,
the excitement.
it was an amazing film for anyone of our age, because it was, I think, I'm guessing, and all the Disney people are going to freak out, I think Bedknobs and Broomsticks and maybe Robin Hood were right before you guys. But like, as far as like a Disney renaissance of like kid movies, Apple Dumpling Gang and all that stuff, I think was either contemporary or afterwards. But Escape to Witch Mountain was like a big deal. So how old were you? Like 10, 11? When you
11 years old. 11.
So you're 11 years old. Witch Mountain comes out. How does it change your life? Because it was such a huge deal.
It helped, I want to say, launch my career, because that's such a strange way to put it for a child actor. But it opened up every door in the world. I got busier and busier and busier and busier, auditioning constantly. Everything kind of exponentially ramped up. And those were the days, when movies were in theaters for up to 2 years. So the presence of myself in a Disney movie was everywhere in the United States for a good chunk of time there. And it ended up going to the double feature. There'd be two Disney movies, and it would be one of them, and then the drive-in theaters and all of that. So it changed my world in many ways, because all of a sudden I was being recognized. And that hadn't happened up to that point. I'd done television, bunch of commercials. I mean, my God, I wish I'd kept a running list of all the commercials I did, because I lost count very, very quickly. But even with all of that, it wasn't like people were coming up to me and saying, were you in that Hasbro commercial? I thought I saw you, or something like that. But all of a sudden, now everywhere I was going, people were staring at me. It seemed like. I mean, I can't emphasize this enough. I used to play TV games in my backyard. Played Wild Wild West. I played Batman and Robin. I mean, literally, my brother and I had the most amazing Batman and Robin handmade costumes that my mother and grandmother made for us. We were completely, because that was all there was to watch was television
Yeah.
back then. It was a very limited scope of things, but it just fed my imagination. And I would go play these games and pretend like I was in the show and do all of this stuff. So all of a sudden now I'm doing it for real. And it's no different than what I did in my backyard. And I just thought, this is so much bloody fun. Why would someone muck with it? Why would you muck with it?
Right.
Because so many things go wrong anyway. When you're shooting something, there's so many things that happen that are distracting, that made you have to start over, that can be frustrating and time consuming. And it requires as much patience, I think, as it does discipline to do it, because like you said, I'm glad you brought this up, because what people see is the finished product. And that's smooth and seamless. It's all done. You don't stop and think, well, wait a second. How many people did it take to get that shot? How long did it take to get that shot? And how many times did they have to do it, etc. And yeah, she was mystifying to me, very much mystifying to me. And we didn't, it's not like we didn't get along, except for those incidents, which I'd rather save for the book and not reveal them.
Of course. No,
here.
I wouldn't.
But it was like, wow, that's what a kid's like. I'm not like that. I wasn't like a kid. They used to call me the little man on set.
Yeah, I remember, and again, pressing into our own personal relationship, to understand your family dynamic, you had your mom and your dad, and you had Al and Ike. Al was the loudmouth, Bill Murray, jokester,
Yep.
Damone from Fast Times, literally worked at the same theater. I mean, the dude was like the showman.
Yeah.
And then there's Ike, who's like really quiet. And you could see the dichotomy between the two of you guys, where, he was boisterous and you were quiet. Whenever I would come over and hang out with Al, it would be like, where's Ike? He's in his room drawing.
Yeah.
That's all you did. You were in your room drawing.
That's all I did. Yeah.
And it was like, I totally get it. It's like you're happy on your set. And it's so funny because my brother's very much like that, in that same way that he wasn't into himself. He was withdrawn. It's like in his own world. He would do his things in his own, for him, it was games. He would play games until he mastered them. And that was all he would think about. Mm-hmm. And so when you're doing all of this stuff and becoming like a professional actor, I can see where your personality works like that. And I'm looking at this like ridiculous list of resume. You did Kung Fu, Emergency, Gunsmoke, Mannix, SWAT, Policewoman. When you're doing these shows, like you say, there's only 3 networks.
Yeah.
20, 30 million people are watching each of these episodes. What was it like for you working with people that you had you watched all the shows that you had been in?
Oh yeah, we watched everything. We really did, because it was our business. It was my father's business, and so we watched as much as possible. And so I was aware of them. But the thing is, because I started so young, I started when I was 9 years old, and my first commercial I did was with Bob Ridgely. Okay, so before
if you don't know Bob Ridgely is, if you've ever seen Boogie Nights, the colonel who comes in with the coked up girl and he tells her to get out of here and asks to see Mark Wahlberg's stuff, is Bob Ridgely. That's Bob Ridgely.
That's Bob Ridgely, and he's
legendary voiceover guy.
Yeah, and brilliant comedic actor. He was just outrageously funny and so good, because he had that. I mean, even in Boogie Nights, he's hysterical. He's got that deadpan kind of delivery for stuff, where he just makes you laugh. And he did. That shoot was fun because of him. And I don't even know why I remember that it was him. I do have some pictures from the set, and one of them you can kind of recognize him in, but it stuck with me. The name just stuck with me, and we started seeing him, of course, everywhere not long after that. But not sure where I was going with this. But no, I did. I knew who these people were. And because I was in the business so young and dove right in and just moved along, I was never starstruck. I was never intimidated. I was intimidated twice, only twice. But to me, my dad was on TV. They're on TV.
Right.
He's a real person. They're real people, and then I would meet them and they'd be just like who they were on television, and almost to an individual, incredibly, warm and nice and super professional. And I only ran across some unprofessional performers a couple of, well, kind of a few times in my career, but it just still goes back to the same thing. We're all, as a crew, and it's exactly how I felt. I was a member of the crew. I wasn't an actor. That was my job.
Right.
That
Right.
was
That's what you
what I
did on the
did
crew.
on the crew. Yes,
Yeah.
that's better put. And I thrilled at that. I mean, I liked being a part of the team and making something magical. I mean,
So it's interesting. So like when most people would think about like, oh my gosh, you were starstruck to meet, any one of these quote unquote actors. The only thing I've heard you talk about in this interview and in the book that you were starstruck about was Walt Disney Studios. Was this
Yeah.
I'm going to guess, but you can tell me the magic of it, or the idea of Walt Disney, or was it Walt Disney? What was it?
It wasn't Walt Disney. I knew he was a person.
Mhm.
And my basically my grand sum total experience with Walt was watching The Wonderful World of Disney on Sunday nights, which was an absolute ritualistic viewing in our house every Sunday
Mhm.
night. And Walt would sometimes introduce the shows. They'd intercut him some things he'd done from the past to keep him alive long after he had passed. And it was just like the studio had an allure to me, because I knew they were doing amazing, fantastical things on that lot. And that's what was killed me the most about auditioning so many times. I never got to see inside the studio until my screen
Yeah,
test.
the setup of Walt Disney Studios, and it's still there, it was Buena Vista, the street Buena Vista, which is where they get either the street gets its name from Disney or he got the name for
I
Buena
don't
Vista
know,
Productions.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
But it's right on Buena Vista, and they have a guard gate, and then right to the side of the guard gate was where the casting office was. And
yeah,
it's
right
a
up front.
smaller lot. It's not like Warner Brothers, it's not like Paramount or
Yeah.
Universal. It's a small lot. So literally, like the first stage and then that animation building is like you can see it from the casting place,
Yeah.
but you can't go in. You can only go into the casting place until you got a job.
Yeah, the
So
casting
you're seeing that.
the casting office had a side door, so you didn't need a walk-on or a permit to get on the lot. You just parked in the parking lot and then walked in the side door and checked in. But once you headed down a hallway towards the casting director's offices, there was another door that led out to the studio, and it had a small little glass window like this in it. Or it could have been larger. I don't really know. But I would peer through that every time I walked, and I could see the stucco and a brick building that's right across the street from the back side of the casting office, and I would just go, "Oh my God, am I gonna get a glimpse of something?" But it is magical. It's a magical studio. I mean, it's beautiful to be on. It's all Art
Yep.
Deco designed. They've maintained that with most of the new construction that they've done on the lot.
You were describing that dream, and it almost felt like the dream that you described was the big administration building they built with the
that's
seven
what
dwarfs holding
it
up
is
the building.
weird. That is really weird. You're absolutely right, because that's kind of what they look like. These very
Yeah.
cartoonish, balloonish figures. But all of a sudden when I'm working there every day, and my lunch breaks comprised of going out and searching the lot, snooping around, sneaking around, looking everywhere that I could. I'd look into buildings that
Did
I
you
had
ever
no
go in the
business being
tunnels
in.
underneath the animation building?
And the animation building had the greatest draw for me, to use a pun, because there was no security there. You could just go into the animation building, and it's 3 stories tall and lining all the walls. And it's a large building. It doesn't look so large when you're faced with it, but it goes deep back onto the lot.
Right.
But on both sides of the walls, on all 3 floors, was the most amazing collection of drawings and sketches and backgrounds
And it's all original art.
cells,
So like you see
all the
something you
original.
recognize, it's all
Oh yeah,
original. Yeah.
yeah. There's a book. The
Did
book
you ever go
behind
to the
me.
tunnels underneath
No, I never saw
the
that.
animation?
Never saw that. I wasn't ever given that intimate of a tour. But
no one ever gave me the tour, but no one stopped me, and so I was there.
I didn't even
auditioning
know
for
they were
something.
there. Otherwise, I would have definitely gotten
And
caught.
it just takes you to another building, but it's like it gives you, if you're as Disney-phile as you are, it gives you the idea of like, oh, even then he knew that you want to have access to different buildings underneath the ground, which is what they do at Disneyland, and
Yeah.
there's a whole lot of design.
Yeah, I think the
motifs
reason for
there.
that was when they had to transport cells and from in drawings from the animation building to the ink and paint department, they needed to keep it safe from the weather. If it was raining, you couldn't
Right.
move those. You couldn't walk outside and take those things over there. I believe that was the reason why he designed it that way. But yeah, it's just a fascinating place, and I mean, they only have like, I think they might have 4 sound stages back then. I think it was
Right.
only 3.
Was the Western Street with Zorro still
Yep.
an
Still there.
active street then? Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah, it
a
was.
lot of these studios have these backlots, and the backlot that they had was where they shot Zorro, and that's a Zorro parking lot.
Yeah.
But it was like a Western Street, the Apple Dumpling Gang, all those type of things were shot there.
Yeah.
We got to jump ahead here, man. You're just too dense with all these.
Oh,
great
sorry. Well, I can back
adventures.
off for my details.
No. Don't you don't back off. It's like it's this ridiculous career of yours. So we have this thing where it's not really a thing, but it's kind of like you always wanted to be on Little House because of the regular gig.
Yep.
Is what I've heard you say. And
Yeah.
I've always looked at you of like, man, I never did a Disney movie. I wanted to do a Disney movie. I thought I was going to be a Disney kid. I auditioned for everything. Like, name a Disney movie I auditioned for it.
Oh,
Never
wow.
got one of them. But you're in the heart of it, right? Here you are, Escape to Witch Mountain. You've explained how you got it. You get this movie. You're doing the movie. It just has to be the best. Wasn't your first day the day that you get to fly or jump?
Yeah. It was the very first day of shooting when I got to do my first special effect, jumping up in the air to catch the softball during that game. And I couldn't believe it was going to happen that fast. And I was so freaking excited to do it, and ended up spending, they were shooting other things while I was rehearsing. I was off when I wasn't. This was a special circumstance when it came to school on that day, because it needed so much rehearsal time to get used to it and learn how to do it and get it all coordinated before we actually shot it. And the thing I love about that the most, not only was it an incredible amount of fun, but it was hard. It was not easy to do. And the only time I ever actually caught the softball was on camera, the first take we shot. Wow. I missed it every time. He would toss the ball. There was a guy on a ladder on one side of these hedges with the softball, and when I jumped up, he would toss the ball and hopefully meeting the apex of my jump so I could catch it and then drop back down to the ground. But he'd go this way, It was over my head, under, and I'd be spinning around into rehearsals. And finally we just shot it, and there's something, and I know you'll appreciate this. There's just something about the pressure of putting it on film that all of a sudden, for some reason, you get hyper focused, and everyone was hyper focused, and the ball hit my glove, and we caught it. And John Huff, the director, just went crazy. He said he couldn't even believe it. He was so excited. But yeah, that's my first day.
You mentioned that too, and which is really interesting. And I love talking to people of that were kid actors and that have this experience. There is something in a way athletic, but like, do you ever see that movie For the Love of the Game with Kevin Costner about a pitcher?
I've never seen that. No.
Okay, so it's a great movie, and it's one of the things that he does is he plays a pitcher, and he tells himself, okay, clear the mechanism. And it starts off with a shot of the batter, and he's about to pitch to the batter. It starts off as a shot of the whole crowd in the stadium, and everything is loud and it's crazy. And he goes, clear the mechanism, and he starts calming down, and they continue to circle in until finally everything is out of focus except the strike zone, and it's completely quiet.
Yeah.
And it's like this magical moment on an athletic level of like he's just cleared his mechanism and all he's thinking about is hitting that strike zone.
Yeah.
And there's something really cool about a set because it's like loud and boisterous and people are talking and laughing and they go, okay, rolling. And then it gets a little quieter and then you hear speed and now it's pin drop. And then everything is focused on the actor because that's what's being filmed, not because
Mhm.
you're special, but because they need to film you. And all the responsibility of all of these people's jobs is now on you. And you have to
Yeah.
do it right so that all of their jobs make sense. And it gets really quiet. And then the director says, action. And like this magic bullet time thing happens where you do this thing like you're describing. And they go cut. And then everyone's like, oh, that was great, or no, or let's go again. And then it's cacophony again.
Yeah.
I love that moment.
Yeah.
And you describe it so well.
Yeah, it's intoxicating. You know, it really is. And
But how long did it take you guys to do the first Witch Mountain? Like 6, 7 weeks?
8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Yeah, it was about 8 weeks. We were on location for 4 weeks. I mean, it could have been a little bit less time, but you know, it was a low budget Disney movie, but it wasn't a small Disney movie. I mean, you know, we were doing
Right.
locations all over Northern California and Carmel and Palo Alto and various
No, in
places.
some
So we
ways, it
had,
was one of the bigger Disney movies because they usually shot everything at Golden Oaks or on
Yeah.
the lot.
yeah,
All
yeah,
the stuff that all the Kurt Russell movies were shot just at Disney Studios.
right, yeah. So yeah, it was about 8 weeks, 4 weeks back to the studio after that.
And then you were working. You tell a story about you were working with Eddie Albert, who was a method actor, and in the process of the movie, uniquely, you guys kind of shot in order, right?
Yes.
And he was kind of like standoffish until his character wasn't as standoffish.
Yeah.
And was this your first example of working with a method person on and off camera? Method being like you are always that character on or off
Yeah,
camera.
I think it was my first time that I was aware of it because it just seemed so strange. I didn't understand it. No one explained it to me. I just sort of put it together in my own head. Because I've heard about method acting. I'd heard about that and what some actors do, but yeah, Eddie, his character starts out as a grumpy old man, curmudgeon, and doesn't want anything to do with the kids until things start happening and he warms up to them. And that was exactly how it was with him on the set. He didn't speak to any of us or really anybody for that matter until his character warmed up. And then all of a sudden he was a lovely man. He was really a lovely man, and ended up taking me out to lunch in the executive dining room at the studio one day just to chat, you know. So we ended up having a really good relationship. And but it was just strange at first. I didn't quite understand what it was all about because I thought, you know, I'm like
Were you worried
yeah.
about? Were you worried about how you were getting along with him until you figured it out? Or
No, I
if
didn't.
you
I
had
didn't
done
worry
something?
about it.
Okay.
I didn't worry about it. No, I mean, he was a major star, you know, and
Yeah.
he knew what he was doing. I knew he knew what he was doing. He didn't cause any problems. He didn't cause me any problems or give me. It's like he didn't go out of his way to sort of be, you know, curmudgeon-y towards us. He just didn't engage with us unless we were actually working. So it was just
Right.
kind of his way of establishing the character, and he did a good job because I mean, he really comes off like an angry old man in the beginning of the film.
For real.
Yeah, he's good.
So, okay, so this movie comes out. So Escape to Witch Mountain comes out in what, 75, 76? You shoot?
75 it was released. Yeah.
Okay. And as a viewer, obviously I knew you, but as a viewer, and I knew Kim and Kyle and all, I love this movie because it was a great kids movie. And I always compared it to Star Wars in that it was the Star Wars before Star Wars. In that it was like this really cool science fiction, had UFOs, had magic, had all this stuff that, you know, I loved at that period of time. And I think kids did. UFOs were a real big deal in the 70s. seems like everything was Evel Knievel and UFOs for some reason.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, Evel Knievel. God.
Right? And so you come out, this movie comes out, and now you're this big star, like
Mhm.
for real. Like everyone has seen this movie. Are you told immediately that you guys are doing a sequel, or do you start work on it immediately?
No, I didn't. I didn't hear about that until I think it was probably a few months before we were going to shoot, and it ended up being one of the titles that landed under my 3-year contract. So that they just picked that movie from, as one of my movies to do. But yeah,
Right.
it was a few months before we shot, that I had heard about it, and the schedules were clear, like the shooting schedule, to make sure I wasn't doing anything during that period of time. But that was super freaking exciting, to have a sequel, to do a sequel of your
Right.
movie. I mean, it was just amazing.
And in this sequel, I'm going to say these names and not believe it. You're working with Betty Davis, Donald Pleasance, Christopher Lee.
Donald Pleasance was in the first movie. Christopher Lee
Oh,
was
that's
in
right.
the second movie. Anthony James played their like henchman sidekick, who was also just an incredible character actor that I adored. But yeah, it was like I spent all my time pretty much with Betty Davis and Christopher Lee. It was just incredible. She
Now
was
we've gone.
intimidating. Now, see, she was
Tell
intimidating
tell me
because
that. Tell us about Betty Davis. Tell us
she,
about
she's
Betty Davis. I love that.
Betty
Just
Betty
saying
effing
that sentence.
Davis. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, so the and kind of the Hollywood story is Disney cast her in it, and it was all over the trades, and everywhere anyone who talked to me said, "Why is Betty Davis doing a Disney movie? I don't get it," because she was at the height of her career. Not that there was ever necessarily a low point. She just
Right.
went crazy. And she was interviewed, and someone had asked her, "Why did you decide to do a Disney movie?" And her answer was she wanted to appear in something that her grandchildren could see. And that was the whole point. It was her gift to her grandkids to be in something fun, a Disney movie, and that's the sole reason that she did it. And I'm so grateful she did, because it was absolutely extraordinary to work with her. So it was intimidating to
When
meet
you
her.
work with when you you were intimidated on the inside.
Yeah.
Was she intimidating on the outside?
She could
Like,
be. She
uh-huh.
could be, but she wasn't with me. And she broke the ice very fast with me, insisting that I call her Betty. And
Wow.
because she in her Betty Davis way, she says, "We're going to be working a lot together, so you need to call me Betty." And that just disarmed me completely, and it was all over from there. But she was a very demanding person. She would make demands all the time of things she wanted and needed, and people were scurrying around to get that stuff taken care of for her. But she wasn't mean about it. She was just arrogant about it. But I thought she deserves it.
Kind of hard not to be when you're Betty
She
Davis.
deserves it. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I would have expected that. So yeah, but yeah, and
It's like
Chris,
Steve Jobs working at an Apple store.
right?
He's
Yeah,
just gonna, yeah, he expects what he expects.
right,
And you
exactly.
also you have a history of working with incredible people. In the formula, you play George C. Scott's kid,
Yeah,
and so you're working with George C. Scott,
yeah.
and again, another demanding, larger than life, loud, big guy. As far as my imagination, what was the reality?
He was unbelievable. I mean, he was the most. He was just. Of course he knew his star status and the power that he wielded. And the funny thing about that movie is that I was most of my part was cut out of it. I come on screen and say like 4 or 5 lines, and then I'm gone, and that's it.
Mm.
And it was a particularly poignant kind of auditioning process with him, because I had my first audition, and then I got a call back for it, and I thought, wow, this is awesome, man. Wouldn't this be neat? And the callback was simply a meeting at his house with the director, and we just sat and chatted. That was all he did. And he made a big point of saying, it's very important for me that in this movie, it won't work unless the audience understands that my character's relationship with you as his son is the most important thing to him in his life. So we shot for 2 weeks, all these
Wow.
scenes, intimate scenes, emotional scenes, and all this material had been shot. And then the movie comes out and I go to see it. I'm so freaking excited, and I barely
Yeah.
walk on and walk off. And it was a very strange Hollywood experience, because one of the producers, the formula was based on a uber best-selling novel called The Formula, written by Steve Shagan. He was the author, and he got a film deal for it. Part of his deal was he would be a producer on the film, and not just a executive producer in name,
In
but
name
someone
only.
who
Yeah.
is going to be active in it. And apparently he hated everything. He hated the film when it was cut. And so he took over and recut the whole movie and just cut me out of it. No one could figure out why. It was very strange, but primarily working with George C. Scott was incredible, because he was a very deep thinking, very, very, again, extremely kind. He 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 didn't really come off with the gruff nature that he portrays so much in
Mhm.
his roles. But I mean, he treated me so well, and we used to play chess together, because he'd play chess by himself. And I was
Wow.
a budding chess player, and I loved the game, and I had no one to play with, because I got get a chess set for Christmas. I learned the rules. I play with my father. I beat him 3 times, and he quits, says he's never playing with me again. So that was the end of that. I had no one else to play with because my brother was too young. And so I
I
was
can't
watching him.
imagine Al being patient enough to play chess
Oh God,
anyways.
no. But I'm sitting there watching George C. Scott. He's on a break. He's sitting on a side street somewhere, sitting on an apple box with a chessboard on another apple box, and he makes a move, spins the board around, and makes another move and spins the board around. And I, for the life of me, could not figure out how this works. But
Right.
he
You know what the
did,
other guy's doing.
and I was incredibly sheepish about this and nervous, but I asked him if I could play a game with him, and he said, "Of course, absolutely." Well, he slaughtered me, and which I would totally expected, because
Right.
he was the equivalent of like a grand champion player. He was a major chess player, but he complimented me very well, because I lasted 20 minutes once before I
That's pretty
lost.
good for a guy
It
that
was
plays
damn
chess a
good. It
lot.
was
Yeah.
damn good. And he thought, that's great. Keep it up. You're definitely learning. So he was a very giving, caring man. And I loved working with him, and it really broke my heart that much of my part was cut out, because you didn't get to see
That always
a lot of
hurts as
that.
far as an actor, where you have these intentions and understandings of what you put into it, and then you go and you see it and you realize that you're not a part of this thing that you kind of put a lot of energy and effort into.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump around here a little bit. I want
Sure.
to get to Star Trek for sure, but right before that, so you've done Witch Mountain, you've done Witch Mountain 2. You're this kid actor that is like everyone knows, and like all kid actors, damn it, we grow up.
Yeah.
And we're different. We're a different product. And around this time, you did this movie, Dreams Don't Die. Okay.
Mhm.
Which I've always wanted to know personally. It's about this graffiti artist in New York, right? Who does
Yeah.
graffiti
Yeah.
on subways. You yourself are an amazing artist. Were you doing your own art?
I did some of the on-camera stuff, but no, the art was done actually by the graffiti artist that the story was based upon. There was a
Oh,
real
okay.
famous, notorious graffiti artist in New York in the late 70s. And he became like enemy number one amongst all of the transit authority there, the people who ran, the subway
Uh-huh.
system and all of that. And he spawned an entire, like young generation for years of people who went around. They call it trashing.
And we call him Banksy.
Yes, I mean obviously he turned that into something incredibly phenomenal. I'm a huge fan of Banksy, but anyway, it was based upon him. But they were using him for a lot of the spray painting stuff because he had the skills. It's not easy. It takes practice.
No,
I
it's
gotta
it's
tell
a
you.
different skill. And again,
Yeah.
if it's based on his story, then yeah, have the artist that you're telling the
So
story.
he did all the paintings. He did all of that. He did a lot of the on camera stuff, especially the close ups of the hand. I did a couple of shots, like pulling my mask down and revealing myself, and then painting. So you knew I was in there somewhere because I had a handkerchief, wrapped around my face to protect my identity. But yeah, so it was loosely based upon a real graffiti artist's story, and was quite a coup for me. I was very excited because that was the first.
It was a really good movie. I don't know if you can see these movies anymore, but there was a whole.
It's
world
available
of
on
TV
Amazon
movies
Prime
and stuff.
somehow.
Oh, okay.
It's available on Amazon.
Please search it out because it's really. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Now we get to Star Trek. Okay, so
Sure.
now you're an adult,
right?
In the book, you talk about your relationship with Kirstie Alley, your friendship with Kirstie. I know Kirstie from summer school in Prince of Bel-Air, and I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea that you knew Kirstie so well because Kirstie and I would talk about Star Trek, and she had plenty of words to say about being in Star Trek. And some of the stories which you can read in the book talk about that. But how did you find Kirstie as a person? I rarely get a chance to talk about her.
I found her. I was instantly attracted to her as a performer. There was something about her, and you know this better than I do, how funny she was. She was so funny, and we met each other. We're starting to work. There were a couple of scenes that we were by proximity in together, but when we took our breaks, I was not on my own. We were both brand new to the Star Trek world. Okay.
Right.
So we ended up hanging out a lot and talking. And, I was laughing my ass off with her. And I couldn't understand why she got cast as that part. It just didn't make sense to me because here she's playing this very, serious, semi-unemotional.
She's
Romulan
literally
Vulcan.
the opposite of an unemotional person.
Oh, completely the opposite. But you'll get this because when you've been in the business long enough, when someone walks in the door, if they've got it or they don't. Yep. There's no way to fake it. You can do the best you can, but those people that have it that are going to be stars, you just instantly know. And it's like this incredible sixth sense that's based off of working with so many people and seeing what it takes to be special and to be a star. So it was always very exciting to me to meet someone who I knew was going to be a huge star before they were, and be able to pat myself on the back. It was the same way with Alfre Woodard in Cross Creek. I knew that she was going to be a huge star, and instantly. And the thing is, also, this as a performer, you don't want to talk about that stuff with people while they're working because you don't want to get stuff like that in their heads. So I wouldn't discuss this with people. I did kind of reveal it to Kirstie. I did say to her, you're going to be a freaking huge star, and it's got nothing to do with Star Trek. So don't worry about it. She never revealed the stuff to me that was going on set, but apparently she was very mistreated by, I'm assuming, some of the cast members. But
I believe her technical term on the set of Summer School was those fucking assholes.
Yeah, that was it. Those fucking assholes.
Yeah, I mean that was yeah.
So I really do feel like I gave her some comfort and some support when she was really at her wit's end with the situation, and I talked it out with her. And I just said, she wanted to quit the business. She didn't even want to stay in it. She said, if it's going to be like this, I don't want anything to do with show business. And I said, you can't do that. Not based on these people and this experience. You just can't do that to yourself. And that was when I told her, I said, "You're so damn funny." And of course, that's where her career really took off, was in comedy.
Yeah.
But
She has
again,
this great feeling of she just doesn't give a fuck, and she's got this great confidence,
oh God,
and
yeah,
she'll say anything, and she's up for any joke, whether it's about her or self-effacing. She's just, usually you get, and this is why she's a star, usually you get the beauty, which boy did she have,
yeah,
or you get a personality and a sense of humor, which she also had. And it's like, it's a double, you know, it's like she had it all.
yeah. She did.
And
It was all in one
when
package.
I
And
first worked with her on Prince of Bel Air, it was like, oh, she's like this amazingly crazy, funny woman.
yeah,
And then of course, Cheers and everything. You're like, oh well, yeah. I mean, it's only tapping a little bit of what what she's capable of even then.
hmm,
And that was such a great, great experience. I
yeah.
mean, dude, you've got so many. So you're in Star Trek, for God's sake. So Star Trek, you could have an entire career just going to Star Trek conventions and being your character of Star Trek and
Yeah,
being in the Star Trek universe.
yeah.
But I don't know. Have you ever done a Star Trek convention?
I
Have you ever
did. I
done
did
any?
the 50th anniversary. Yeah, in
How
Las
did it go?
Vegas.
What do you think?
Well, those things way overwhelm me. I think they're absolutely incredible. Um, that one was massive. I mean, they took over the entire Rio Hotel convention area,
Wow.
and it's the phenomenon of all that fascinates me, because I'll quickly say I was invited to a Star Trek. It was called a Star Trek convention in St. Louis. Um, Years before, many years before the 50th anniversary convention, and before Paramount had finally figured out that this was a thing and they were going to restrict copyright use, of the trademark and brand of Star Trek. But it was a small convention run by a guy who just wanted to put one together, and he never done anything like it before, but he advertised it, and sure enough, I think he had about 3,000 people there. And that was my first experience with any of this. And when friends of mine heard that I was going to go do this thing, they all said, all right, just be aware. All right. Star Trek fans are a unique and special group of people. And even Dan, the guy who ran it, we had a phone call before I flew in, and he says, look, Ike, I got to prepare you for something, because when you come in, there's a group of us that are picking you up at the airport. Because one of the other things that Dan did for this event was a portion of the proceeds went to a pediatric AIDS wing at a hotel, a hospital that was fairly
Uh-huh.
new. And so he prepped me right up front, saying, we're going to have some people and we're going to go to the hospital, because I want, give you a chance to see what it is we're doing, what we're doing the event for, as much as to just have fun. And he said, some of these people, they're real serious fans, so they might be dressed up a little bit. So just so you know, don't be afraid. They're the best people you'll probably ever meet. I was ill prepared. That was no preparation for walking out to where I met this people. And almost all of them, I think only Dan wasn't dressed up and someone else was not dressed up, but 6 other people were in their incredibly rudimentary makeshift homemade Star Trek uniforms, and one guy was a Klingon with sort of brown makeup smeared around his face and a rubber thing on his forehead, and the Spock ears, and I lost it. I mean, not outwardly, but on the inside, I
Right,
thought,
right.
what have I gotten myself into? I cannot believe people do this. Well, by the time we got to the hospital, and all these characters, all these people started to go around and visit the kids, and the kids went nuts, I
Uh-huh.
thought, okay, there's something really special going on here. The whole event just had a huge impact on the entire ward. And even the nurses or whoever it was that took us around, she started crying. She said, "I'm so grateful for you guys to come here and do this." None of the kids knew who I was. They didn't know. They barely knew
Right.
what Star Trek was. But all these people were coming in dressed up in costumes, there to make them feel better, and they did. And then I ended up going to the event, and I'm surrounded by 3,000 people, not all of them dressed up, but a lot of them trying
Yeah.
to. And this was like the very, very beginning of when people were doing this. There was no network, there was no internet,
Yeah.
per se. There was not much of it available for these people to communicate. And what I ended up seeing over the course of the 2 days I was there, I looked around and I thought, all these people have a deep, deep love for Star Trek, and they're communing over that, and they're sharing over
Yeah.
that, and they're socializing over that. I thought I couldn't fill a banquet hall with people that I share something in common with. It's like I'm sitting here talking to one of them, right? So there's what, like 10 or 12 of us, and yeah, we could do a dinner together, but that'd be the extent of it. I really have this deep envy for what they got to enjoy as an incredible hobby. And then, of course, now it's just completely insane. I was in New York in October because I want to mention this. My Star Trek character is an action figure now.
That's awesome. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah, I'll shoot you a picture. I'll shoot you a picture of it so you can pop it up.
Awesome.
When you put the show together. But yeah, it won't be out till fall of next year. But it took place at New York Comic Con. So I went from this basically, early in my career, tiny convention to going to that New York Comic Con, and I literally got claustrophobia. It was so packed with people, and everyone was dressed
Yeah.
up in stuff that I can't even imagine making myself. And I'm pretty talented. They're incredible, absolutely incredible. So this whole amazing world is now capturing, people's imagination, and they're having a blast with it. So the Star Trek one was great. I have a great picture with like a ton of Star Trek people in costume, this whole big group, and it was good fun for me to see people who had been on Star Trek that I didn't know or hadn't met before. So yeah,
And
it
it's
was a
such a
blast.
large universe now. I mean,
Oh, my
because when
God.
you were doing it, I don't even think obviously there was no Next Gen or any of the
No.
TV shows yet.
No.
We'll be back after these messages. Hey there, my name is Patrick Labyorteaux, and I play an actor on TV. And I also have this acting school called Working Actors School. And what we do there is we teach people to act using Zoom. So you can take an acting class with me and with a person in Connecticut, in Florida, and San Diego all at the same time, thanks to the miracle of Zoom. But we also teach kids. We have a great class called the Youth Weekly class that's every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. And it's for kids. It's for like 10 to 17. And we have a great group of kids right now, and it is ongoing. So if you know someone that wants to get into acting and has never done any acting but would love to try, why don't you have them try starting off with Youth Weekly? Just go to workingactorsschool.com and check us out. It's Youth Weekly every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. Act 3, present day. There's so much to talk about that we're going to fast forward here. You grow up and things change, and then like in an actor's life, I've decided that I'm in it till death, and so I know I'll get work at some point doing other things than what I've done before, but on a day-to-day basis, you can go years without getting a job.
Right.
And so you find yourself, you tell the story, you find yourself in a play and a connection to this secret world
Yeah.
of movie looping, which, as you know, fascinates me.
Oh, wow.
It's the idea of when you watch a movie, you see people in the background in a restaurant, and on set, none of those people can talk because you need to hear the actors who are on camera talking. But then when you see the movie, you still need to hear the people in the background. And so you had this job where you would be the people in the background at the restaurant.
Yeah.
Stupid little, example, but it goes for everything from Star Wars to Jurassic Park to, literally every movie.
Mm-hmm.
Just drop a random number about how many movies you've done this for.
It's well over 1,000. Yeah, over the course of 20 years. And it was a godsend to me because and this was a question I wanted to ask you. One of the hardest things to kind of communicate in my book, or it was for me when I just talked to people, is that I don't consider myself a performer. I don't like the attention. Now as I'm
Right.
getting older, it's fun to make jokes and amuse people and entertain them and all of that. But I I was an actor because that's how I could be in the business. It wasn't because I had a deep desire to perform. So as I'm going through my childhood career, and by the time I'm an adult, I'm a decade deep in this business and working a lot. Auditioning ended up being so debilitating to me. I couldn't
Mm-hmm.
stand it. I just hated it so much. And again, this, if you got an attitude like that, you take it into the casting office. You can't get rid of it. You can't pretend otherwise. You got
Yeah,
to
it's a
feel it or you
stink that you
don't.
can't. You can smell
No.
it. Yeah.
And so my dream, which was I even the chapter in my book is titled My Impossible Dream, was how can I continue to work as an actor without ever having to audition again? And it was just an insane idea. And by
Right.
sheer coincidence, like you mentioned, I was doing a equity waiver play, tiny little play in Hollywood, and one of the other actresses in it was involved in this business called looping. And I'm asking her about it because it doesn't make sense. Because usually for us, looping means we're going in to replace our dialogue in a show we did or a film that's been messed up by extraneous noise or whatever. We're revoicing ourselves, and so I just thought that's what she was doing. And then she goes to explain it to me, and a restaurant scene is exactly the example I always give. But I also
Mm.
always say in that same restaurant scene, you're hearing glasses tinkling and utensils clanking and footsteps and everywhere. Well, that's the part of the process most people are familiar with, and it's called Foley. It's sound effects, usually done by one person on a
Right.
soundstage with a whole bunch of garbage around them that they use to create all these sounds. What we did, or it's still done, it has to be, is created custom vocal sound effects for then all the background actors. And it's a massive business. It's a massive business because it's literally half of the post-production process for movies, not in terms of
Right.
time, but in terms of how you are creating the reality of the scene with audio. It blew my mind the first day I
Well,
worked. I
I want to be
watched this.
clear about this. When you say it's a massive business, it's a massive creative aspect of the finished film,
Right.
but the business itself is cultish.
Yeah, it's very,
There
yeah,
was,
it's
yeah,
those participating in it are few and far between. And not a lot of people do it. And when people start to do it, they'll literally kill to keep their job because you don't have to audition. I worked
right.
with, I started out with a woman named Barbara Harris. She still works to this day. She's huge in the business, always has been. She was the casting director, and she had her group of actors that she would rotate from job to job to job. And you get a phone call saying, from her assistant asking, "Are you available to work tomorrow?" Well, heck, yeah, I was available to work tomorrow, and then I go to work. And so I ended up then quitting my on-camera career because I was growing to hate it. I wasn't working as much, and
Right. Yeah.
I got bills to pay. We all got bills to pay. And then I
Yep.
started doing that, and it just kind of took off from there.
And I'm not
And
going to ask for you to give any financials, but I'll run over the financials. The thing about looping, which is the magical golden goose, which
yeah,
why everyone who does it kind of keeps it quiet, is because when you're hired on the movie, you're hired as a day player.
right.
And under day player contract, you get access to residuals.
Hmm.
So imagine on your resume, which it says for real on Ike's resume, he is at least a day player, probably multiple days on some of them, a day player on over 1,000 movies, which
Yeah.
means you're getting residuals for over 1,000 projects on the regular, which
Hmm.
is a very, very good business because
Yeah.
not only are you making your contracted day, but then the residuals are always there to tide the actor over because look, I think I have 56 credits on IMDb versus 1,000
Yeah.
would be on your IMDb if they listed it. So it's a crazy great consistent income stream that allows you to just like chill, which
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
amazing.
Everyone obviously worries about their livelihood and making sure things last, especially when it's great and it's working for you. But it gave me such a sense of relief that I just didn't have to go out there and grind anymore. I
Yeah.
was done with it. And
You've been doing it since
and
you were 9.
yeah, yeah. So it's very lucrative, and it's not a skill that just anybody can do either. You think every actor thinks they can do it, and
Yeah,
I've
it's not.
I've seen actors come in and just literally crash and burn on the stage, because the only way you can audition them for it is to give them a job and see how they do and how willing they are to learn, because it's a very odd form of improv, because we're up there in front of the microphone improving conversation about nothing. It's just about nothing. It's like the Seinfeld episode of
Right.
film production.
You
You're
can't
just
draw attention to yourself.
no.
You have to be specific. It's almost as if you're inhabiting the person you're seeing and imagining how they would do it. So you're performing for someone that you don't know.
Yeah.
It's there's so many angles to it. I
Yeah.
did it a couple of times and loved it, but it's not easy.
Yeah. No, it's not. So those people that that cream you pull off the top for the people who do it and do it well, they work constantly. Absolutely constantly. And
Is there a project or a moment in a film? Because my brother did this, and he worked with you. You guys had a group called the Mad Dogs, and my
right.
brother worked with Mad Dogs. And there's a movie called Under the Tuscan Sun where the woman is she's moved into this horribly bad apartment, and there's a divorced guy next door to her who's always crying because he's just been divorced, and it's a very funny bit. You never see the guy, but the guy who did the voice is my brother,
Yeah.
and he's very funny.
Yeah.
Is there any voice job or thing in a movie that you've done that you're especially proud of that like people would know of, or is it just all?
Yeah, the example I give the most, because it's probably one of the best movies we did, not only in terms of our work as a group, but the original Gladiator. Um, that was a monster project. To kind of give you an idea, generally speaking, if you loop a movie, you maybe have 8 actors on the stage, and we can do the whole thing, all the crowds and all that stuff, because they just double up tracks and if necessary. But the crowds were so massive in Gladiator that we had to hire 35 actors a day in order to give the sound department all the noise that they wanted. That they wanted. Well, we ended up coming across a cue. I ended up doing, basically, there's a term called efforts, that if you get punched in the stomach, you go, ooh, you make a noise, and they call it an effort. So we said we need to do some efforts for this character, whether they're shot or they fall down or whatever it is. But a scene came up that they didn't know what to do with Joaqun Phoniex in it, and I don't remember what the context of the scene is, but he's visiting an infant child, and it's a really intimate close up of him leaning in, and you just don't know what he's going to do to this baby. You have no idea, and he puts his face like right down over him like that, and then kind of smirks and backs up. Well, the ADR editor said, okay, what's his name? Ridley Scott wants something here to make this scene work, but nobody has any idea what to do. And I said, I know what to do. And I jumped up and they play the scene, and as he leans in, I just went, sniffed like he was smelling the baby. And it's in the movie, because when they played it for Ridley Scott, he said, oh, I like that. That's really sick. And then at the end of the movie, I ended up doing all of his efforts and grunts and groans and his death chortle for the fight at the end. And my partner, Mitch Carter, did all of Russell Crowe's efforts and breaths and grunting. So he and I were basically on the stage separately, because you don't do it together, but separately doing both parts. But everything you hear coming out of Joaqun Phoenix's mouth, other than his dialogue, is me at the end of the movie. So that's why I
That's
like to
right.
give it as an example, because if people want to go look and say, "Oh my God, this is what he told me about," you can see it, right there. So yeah.
I love that story because I tell this story on TikTok where I was like an ad hoc guy. They'd come in and for a specialty thing, and they were doing a test screening for a movie called Sliver with Sharon Stone and Billy Baldwin, and there's a scene that they were testing where Billy Baldwin's masturbating to watching Sharon Stone in a bathtub, right? So Sharon Stone is in a bathtub masturbating, and then Billy Baldwin's got all these cameras, and he's watching her on closed circuit TV. And I do a pretty good Baldwin, and so I audition. They bring me in, and I'm there with Philip Noyce, the director, and he goes, "I want you to climax here, here, and here." And I'm standing in front of the mic, going, "Oh, okay, so I'm gonna climax." Because he's masturbating, he's going to climax, and I'm being in my head. I'm like, going, okay, and then it occurs to me, what if I don't sound like anyone else sounds like? What if I make sounds that is like really, really like awkwardly like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
no, bring it down. So I get through this recording, and in the back of my head, I'm like, well, hey, love this business. At least now I know what it will sound like, or what it would sound like if I ever had sex with Sharon Stone, because over the speakers, Sharon Stone is, climaxing all over the place, and I'm climaxing. And so in my head, I've got this mental picture of, me and Sharon Stone having sex. So I go, and all these people with Newell Alexander and Noreen and my mom and Patrika, and they're all having like some sort of barbecue. And I go and I tell this story, and Noreen's in the corner laughing. She goes, "Oh, right. I looped Sharon Stone for that scene."
Oh my God.
So it's not like I had sex with Sharon Stone. It's like I had sex with my mom's girlfriend.
Oh my God. Okay, now that's hilarious. That is hilarious.
And it's like, and so, it's one of the great stories I tell, because of like so many weird things happened that, but one of the things that I did enjoy, and which you must have had a tremendous amount of experience in, is on a sound stage, because you're seeing the big screen, it's dark.
Mhm.
Your job is to be at the mic doing your job. And then when you don't, you're at a chair and you're quiet and you're
Right.
invisible. Half of you has to be invisible. And then when you're in the spotlight, you have to perform and then be invisible again.
Mm-hmm.
In these movies, you got to be working with these famous directors that come in and supervise the edit, or come in and work with the edit.
I want to make
What
sure.
is that like?
I'm going to stop you for a second. My whole screen blanked out and then popped back in again. So it's still running for you?
Still running for
Okay,
me.
good.
It still looks like it's good.
Yeah, my
So I'll just
window
ask
in
the
the
question
browser
again.
went dark. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So the idea here is that you could be working with, like, I got to work with Philip Noyce, and you did something for Ridley Scott. I don't know if he was there, but have you worked with big directors in this soundstage
It was
situation?
usually rare to have them on the stage with us, but there were a number of real hands-on directors that wanted to be there. That was usually a big red flag for us, because oftentimes directors come in and they have no idea how looping works and how it works the most effectively.
Right.
We do it like a machine, and we can crank stuff out and get a job done in a timely manner. But sometimes directors would come in and they'd say, "Yeah, I like that, but let's try it again like this." They always want a second take. And it's like, no, you don't understand. There's another group's going to do their side, and then when you play it all back, so it would just become like incredibly annoying. But there were some who were really good, like Bob Zemeckis, because we looped both Castaway and gosh, I've forgotten the name of it. Polar Express, the animated film.
Yeah.
Um, and Bob Zemeckis was on stage with us for both movies, because he just loves the process, and he'd throw out suggestions every once in a while, but didn't muck with our business too much. So Bob Zemeckis, Chris Rock was on the stage. I forgot what movie we worked with him on. Bobcat Goldthwait was on stage. We looped a very controversial movie that that a lot of people hate. I happen to love it, but Shakes the Clown. I don't know if you've ever
I
heard of it.
love Shakes the Clown.
I
Yeah.
freaking love that
The
movie, man.
alcoholic clown movie.
Yeah. And but the interesting part about that, we also this will wrap together with Bobcat as well. But when we would work on comedies, and the director was there, they were incredibly grateful because we'd watch a scene and we'd laugh our butts off, right? When we're getting the rehearsal, we're just watching the scene play out before we go to work on it. And, you know, we weren't forcing it. The movies were funny and we were laughing
Right.
out loud. And the one that I thought was particularly impactful was, oh God, it was like it was a college like fraternity. Will Ferrell was in it, and you know some other people before Will Ferrell was really Will Ferrell at this
Right.
point. But it was just a really kind of dark, very funny, offbeat comedy, and we were laughing our butts off. And about halfway through the day, Todd Phillips, that's the director, I believe, Todd Phillips.
Yeah.
He
I know the movie you're talking about. It just hasn't, the name hasn't come to me
yeah,
yet
it's just
as
not
well.
popping into my
Yeah.
head. But anyway, he said, guys, I got to stop and I got to tell you how thankful I am to be in here with you because you're the first audience I've ever had see this movie. So
Right.
that's how it gets wrapped up. And it's incredibly rewarding because we're not faking it. We're actually enjoying the film, but we were the first test audience. It's the, by the time it goes to looping, editorial's locked. You've been in a dark room with an editor and a few producers, and that's all you have until someone gets to see it and you see does it work or not. And so that was very rewarding with the comedies because it always made the directors feel better because they had a chance to experience what they knew people were going to experience in the theater. So, yeah, and I'm trying to think if there's anyone else. We were terrified that James Cameron was going to show up for Titanic. No one wanted him there because we just thought, oh God, we'll never get the movie done if he comes on set and starts.
What's the longest
and
did you ever work on one project?
Titanic. It was 11 days. Again, 35 to 40 actors a day for 11 days. So, yeah, that was a long one. Yeah, and a great one too. It was just
I was
great.
just going to say, I mean, as an actor counting money, there's 11 days of a contract.
Yeah.
Plus, the amount of days you work increases your residual rate.
Yep.
And I think Titanic did pretty well.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that you did. I'm sure that you did okay with that. I want to come around to one last project and then to questions. And that last project is Return to Witch Mountain. I think that's the name of it, right? Where you and Kim came back.
The sequel or the remake?
The remake.
The remake's Race to Witch Mountain.
Race to Witch Mountain.
Yeah.
So, I mean, not too many people have the opportunity to have bookends for real on a career, because right after that, weren't you live in Florida? You live at Disneyland for real.
Yeah.
Right?
Disney World. 10 minutes.
Disney World, because I'm sorry, that's the big difference. And I think that's awesome because I think it really, I mean, it fills out the whole story.
Yeah.
What was Race to Witch Mountain like?
Oh, it was absolutely overwhelming. And I'll try not to go on for too long, but I was so darn excited. I got the phone call from Andy Fickman, the director. Managed to find my phone number, and I couldn't figure out how that happened, but Hollywood can do anything it wants usually. And he called me up and said, look, we're shooting this reimagining of Escape to Witch Mountain and we'd love you to be a part of it. And I said, oh my God, yes, please, please, please. And he told me Kim was going to be in it also. And he explained the whole thing to me. And I was just really, really excited. And a few weeks later, I was flying out to LA and I decided to do something just sort of on a whim. I hadn't watched Escape to Witch Mountain in quite some time. Now, I've seen this movie way too much. Even back before I started writing my book, I whenever it was on television, I would just go ahead and watch it. You know, it was on the Hallmark
Yeah.
channel for a year or 2 years, and it was on it constantly, almost every weekend. So it got massive exposure all the time. And so I would just sit down and watch it. I remember once I actually had it on the television, but I wasn't in the room watching. I was just listening to it, which was a whole nother interesting thing, to just hear all the audio and the dialogue and then have the memories flood through my head. But I had decided, it had been a while, I was going to sit down and watch it because I knew I was going to get asked a lot of questions. And because Andy had already prepared me, saying pretty much everybody who's working on this film is a huge fan of the two of you and that original film. And so you're going to have quite the welcome. So I was prepared for it, but I took a DVD along with me and watched it the night before I went to work. And it was both a good thing and a bad thing, because I was just sitting here all by myself watching the movie with almost a fresh set of eyes. And I started weeping. I started crying because all these freaking memories were coming to me. And, you know, I say this in my book, and I say this all the time to people. I never got a chance to see Escape to Witch Mountain for the first time. Okay. I didn't.
Yeah.
Because I read the script, I was in it, and you know what, the abstract nature of that idea. When I saw it for the first time, well, I'd worked on it, you know, so I was seeing stuff that all it does to me. Sometimes I can't back out enough to just appreciate it as a movie, because I'm seeing the crew, I'm thinking about what went on, you know, where we were, and it's all about those memories. So it was, you know, really really emotional, and I was glad I did it because I kind of got that out. But that was kind of the beginning of me saying to myself, because so many people had told me I needed to write my stories down in some fashion. And I thought, man, I have all these incredible memories of what actually happened, and I'm the only one alive that does. I'm the only one.
Right.
Because Kim doesn't remember anything. She doesn't remember anything about working on the movie, which was a tragic discovery for me. So anyway, although
it's a hysterical story in your book, which I won't give away the punchline.
No,
it's
yeah,
like classic.
But I go to work, and you know, I walk onto the set, onto the stage, and I hadn't, because I lived had been out of Hollywood for a good 12 years. I hadn't been back to the Disney lot in all that time. So here I am walking onto the lot. I'm walking up to stage 2 where we shot Witch Mountain. That's where the set was for the whole dance hall, that the main scene from Race to Witch Mountain. And I walked in, and like everybody who looked up at me said, "Oh my God, it's the real Tony. It's the real Tony." And I just sort of I had that swarm that I know major stars get when people are just out of control, excited to meet them. But it was all in a very safe and, you know, comfortable way, you know. So I had to meet everybody. I had to shake hands with everybody, and Kim had to do the same thing, and even Dwayne Johnson had to do the same thing. Just like it was incredible, and I almost felt like I was being pranked, because I thought, had they just made this up so that they could, you know, put me in this position? It just didn't seem real. I mean, the admiration, you know, and from everyone was really overwhelming, and just the sheer idea that you know, a movie I did when I was a kid not only had a sequel, but also had I call it a remake, but it's really a reimagining. But it was still, you know, Kim and I got to be in it, and that it was just fantastic. And the other thing about, you know, here I just wanted to be a part. I would have done anything, 5 lines on any Disney project just to get to do it. And now here I've been a part of 7 Disney projects. I was under contract.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of movies we didn't even mention about the Wonderful World of Disney. And just different aspects that you've been a part of. Yeah,
and thankfully I have all of those on Betamax. I have them all on videotape. So I was
from the original airings.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We'll be back after these messages. Hey there, my name is Patrick Labyorteaux, and I play an actor on TV. And I also have this acting school called Working Actors School. And what we do there is we teach people to act using Zoom. So you can take an acting class with me and with a person in Connecticut, in Florida, and San Diego all at the same time, thanks to the miracle of Zoom. Now, besides classes, I also offer a one-on-one session. It's an hour just between you and me working on a particular piece of material, whether it's for an upcoming audition or maybe you're working on something and you need to have that breakthrough moment. These are really, really fun, and they're really, really great because they're really personalized and intense in all the good ways that intense can be. So if you're working on something, if you want to break through, if you want to have a one-on-one session where you're not working with other people, this is the way to do it. All the information is in the classes page on workingactorsschool.com. Act 4, questions. So with the questions, these I ask every person. The first question is, that's showbiz. What's the most Hollywood moment in your life?
Man, that's a crazy wild question. I don't know if I have a real specific answer to it. I think my most Hollywood moment had to be just going to the premiere of Race to Witch Mountain, because it was at the Egyptian not the Egyptian theater, the El Capitan theater, Disney's theater, and there was a red carpet, and there was press and and cameras and microphones, and walking down the red carpet with Kim and talking to people and getting my picture taken and thinking I'd never been to a premiere of anything I had done before. That was the only time I was ever at one.
We would have cast and crew screenings. They probably aired all the movies you'd been to were across from the animation building.
Yeah, at the theater on the Disney lot. Yeah, that's where we saw Escape to Witch Mountain and Return from Witch Mountain. So there weren't any movies that had that aspect to it, and it's very interesting because that it just that would have to be it. Because that
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
I would also suggest, and again, it's in the book, the moment where Betty Davis explains to you how to be a star.
Yeah, I'm saving that.
Example.
I'm saving that
for my readers.
Yeah,
it's good.
No, that was incredible. I didn't want to necessarily go into that story and spoil it right here, but man,
I totally understand it. It was so much fun because you can't go into the detail you do in the book.
Yeah.
Okay, that's Showbiz Part 2, the most embarrassing Hollywood moment.
Oh, I was going to meet a theatrical agent for the first time as a kid. By the time I was with Collie Vidal at Herb Tannen, right? She did all my commercial stuff, but she was also responsible for getting me my audition for Gunsmoke, my first TV show. Once I got that, then I was going to start going out on more auditions. She says, I can't handle you for that, Ike. That's not my, area of specialty. So I have a recommendation, Toni Kelman, and I've talked to her. She'd love to meet with you. Yeah. So the day before, it must have been that day, because I think I went to school. I got sick with the flu the day I was supposed to meet her. And it came on really hard by the time 4:30, 5 o'clock came around, and I was feverish and I was sick and I was shaking. And we're in her office. We're in the office space, not in her office, and waiting to go in to meet her. And all of a sudden, I look at my dad and I say, "I'm gonna throw up. I'm gonna throw up. I'm gonna throw up." He said, "Go to the bathroom. It's right there. Right there. Just go to the bathroom." And so I run over with my hand on my mouth like this, and I open the door to go, and it was unlocked, completely unlocked. And there's Toni Kelman sitting on the toilet as I have to projectile vomit. And I stopped myself and slammed the door, found a trash can, and dumped my guts into that. But my God, I'll never forget the look on her face. She had nice legs too. That was just like, oh, I cannot believe.
Did you sign with her?
Oh yeah, definitely. She got me most of my work in my teen years. She was great. She laughed about it. She came out and she was laughing. She wanted to make sure I was okay first, And my father said he's come down with something. It just happened today. I'm so sorry. And she says, no, don't worry about it. She said, we don't really need to meet. I know your work. Collie's recommendation comes well. So I'm going to have you sign a contract out there, and then you can go home and get some rest.
Oh,
And
wow.
that was it. But yeah,
That's
that
probably
always.
the best story I've heard as far as like the most embarrassing. The next one is Show Me the Money. Your biggest missed financial opportunity. Don't need details as far as numbers, but like we get opportunities all the time because we're in this crazy business.
Yeah.
What's your biggest missed financial opportunity?
I was pretty active in the voiceover business in my early 20s. I wasn't particularly talented in terms of character work or anything like that, but I could sound like the young teenager, and that was always a bit of a commodity. So I kept, I booked this and I booked that, but they'd be one-off projects. And then I booked this show called Ring Raiders, and it was a new animated television series. And this was at the height of like Transformers and My Little Pony, and those are the only two I can think of that were on every day from after school.
He-Man and all these different shows,
but they were all toy
merch.
driven. They were all toy driven. So if there wasn't a toy line, there could be no show, and there can't be a show without a toy line. It was how it was set up. So I go in and I'm so freaking excited, and I'm recording episodes. We recorded 10 of them, and about 3 episodes in, one of the producers came in and said, you guys, all of you, just so you know what to be prepared for, go to Toys R Us. Ring Raiders has got its own section, and you'll see what we're trying to support here. So I go to Toys R Us. It wasn't a section. It was the entire side of one aisle in the store was all Ring Raiders toys. And I looked at that and I said, holy crap. Because everyone that was doing an animated show back then, and you talk about residuals, they were getting filthy rich because they ran over and over and over and over and over again. And then you'd go in and record more forever, how long it lasted. I said, this is my retirement. I mean, this is what this is going to be. They aired 3 episodes and then canceled it. Canceled it. And it turns out that there was the federal government, the FCC came down on all the production companies and the networks that were airing what parents had considered 30-minute commercials for toys. They had no redeeming value whatsoever, other than they were just 30-minute commercials for toys. And it was true. But this contingent out there managed to move the federal government to ban this practice. So you either had to do a show, and you could have a toy spinoff from it, but the show had to happen first. Or so I don't even know what the rules were, but that was it. Ring Raiders was done. It was over. It was like, no, can't do it. They cracked down on us.
They started canceling with your show.
Oh yeah, yeah. It ended up being a VHS, which I have a copy of, just a one episode VHS. That they released, and that was the extent of it. And I was like, oh my God, it was a huge loss. But
I feel your pain.
It was right at the time I was starting to do ADR. So in a way I was grateful because those things still run, right? They run out eventually. And I wouldn't have been able to do ADR because I wouldn't have been available.
Titanic is still popular.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. The next question is Show and Tell. As a teenager, your favorite poster in your room, and how did you come to obtain it?
I didn't put posters up in my room. I was a weird kid, Patrick. I was a very weird kid.
Well, I understand that, but I remember you had. I guess the posters I'm thinking of that I saw were your own drawings. You were at one point heavy into Lord of the Rings, and
I was, yes.
I think.
Yes, I was.
I think. Did you have a Wizards poster or movie poster?
No, I didn't have that one. I think I did buy a Lord of the Rings poster because I was so looking forward to that, having read the books in junior high school, and so I was very excited about that. But I did really do the poster thing. What I had on my walls, yes, were some of my drawings or watercolors or whatever I was doing at the time on one wall, and then on another wall, I had the collection of headshots that I collected from the stars I worked with that were autographed to me. They were all
Well,
on
there
another
you
wall.
go. I
So
mean,
yeah,
there's
that's
your
what I had.
answer.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Next one is Sheaux Down. What's the best thing you ever did and the worst thing you ever did?
I don't want to upset people, but I think the worst thing I ever did was Devil Dog Hound of Hell with Kim Richards. It was a TV movie horror story about a dog that's possessed by the devil, and he ends up this creature somehow invades our consciousness, and Yvette Mimieux played our mother, and now we're doing the bidding of this evil dog, and Richard Crenna has to stop it and kill it, and save us. It's just a lot of
I
people
didn't know
like
you
this
and
thing.
Kim had done another movie. Is this so? This makes 3, or was there any other projects you guys worked together?
That would make 4, because there was Witch Mountain, Return, Devil
Oh,
Dog,
right,
and then Race.
and then
Yeah.
Race. Okay.
But it
Although the Devil Dog thing, you could also claim that it was the best titled thing you've ever done and the worst movie.
yeah.
What's the best thing you've ever done?
It's funny because I've been very proud of the work I've done, and I've never felt cringy at all about my performances, but I feel like it's like I always default to Escape to Witch Mountain because I can't beat it for the experience, and for for the work that we both did. Kim and I both did. I look at it and I say, God damn, you think about a 9-year-old girl, 9, is pulling off a performance like that. I'm kind of sidewinding here for a moment because I kind of wanted to ask you this same question. I feel like instead of former child stars, we should be considered child acting prodigies, because we could simply do something that no one else could do. It wasn't like every kid in Hollywood could do that and you're competing with everybody. It was a select group of people that had the sensibility and the talent and the discipline and the drive and the excitement and all of that. Because you look at a piano player who's 9 years old and is riffing Rachmaninoff in a concert hall, and you think, well, that's a child prodigy. But you don't necessarily look at a child actor and say they're a prodigy. They're just, I don't know, they're just what they are. We're kind of freaks. So it took me writing my book to literally process my entire life, because I had all my, you look at IMDb, and I've had to go back to it as a resource, many times prior to writing my book. But then one day I'm looking at it and I'm looking at all these titles and I'm thinking, man, I can hardly make sense of my own childhood. There's all these titles, there's all this stuff. And how did it all come together? And really writing the book allowed me to do that. But so on the one hand, Escape to Witch Mountain it ranks up there to answer your question. But on the second hand, I think Cross Creek really ranks up there. Not necessarily my work, but being a part of an Academy Award winning movie was just like, I mean, what a great bookend in a sense.
Yeah.
And it's a really good movie. That's a lot of people know it, they're familiar with it. And I highly recommend it because it's a beautiful, well-made movie that doesn't feel dated in any way. So that's kind of nice.
No, I agree with that. And I think those are good answers, because for someone who is in love with the business as opposed to themselves, which is like the performer.
Yeah.
But you love the business, that Witch Mountain and Cross Creek are two sides of the same coin. The experience and the final piece is beautiful. This one is called No Show. Is there anything you've always wanted to do but haven't yet?
Oh, everything. I was a greedy little fucker. I wanted to do Streets of San Francisco. I wanted to do, I wanted to do Kojak. I wanted to do everything. I just thought if it was on the air, I wanted to do it. So, yeah,
that's a great answer.
That's just simply the truth. I think a lot about the big films that I auditioned for and had several callbacks for that I didn't get. That was frustrating, but it was at that period of time in my life where I was always mentally transitioning out of it anyway. But I think of Ordinary People. I read for Robert Redford, and I went far.
Wow.
And TAP. I think it's called TAP. That military school movie that I think it's Tom
Taps.
Cruise is in.
Yeah.
Taps.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. Yeah, Michael J. Fox and I read together. He got it. I didn't. So, but that's the stuff that you just, you shield it. You take it on. It's just water off a duck's back. You get disappointed, but what are you going to do? You got to move on.
Yeah. Okay, so finally, here it is. Final question. Show me some love. What do you think is your favorite performance of mine?
Of yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's your favorite of mine?
I gotta tell you, and it's summer school, right?
Uh-huh.
I thought you were freaking awesome in that.
Thank you.
No, I mean, like
Thank
seriously. You had matured a lot by then, not only just physically, but in your work. And I could see it. I could totally see it. I thought that's a very funny movie. You're just really good at it. And I only saw it like within the last year. I think I watched it because I forgot what reason why. It was something for the podcast, and I had never seen it before, and I had completely didn't even know that you were in it. And I was just like, oh my God, it's Patrick. Holy shit. So that was great fun to watch. But I mean, you've had an awesome career too. And you don't, you're really good at your job. You're really good at your job. And
that means a lot coming from you. I think there was like, when you're talking about prodigies, you're talking about, I look at somebody like my brother who, has an ability to have an emotional rawness as a kid.
Yeah.
That was preternatural, which was weird.
Yeah.
I think if I'm to be honest about my own history, I was very good at just being a kid in front of the camera and not having any artifice, not having any kind of like, let's put on a show. Like I say it like this, but I didn't act in the sense of like I wasn't acting. I was just like a kid. And if they hired me, great. I think when you say that I've matured, I would say that I've grown into understanding, oh, I can play different people than myself.
Yeah.
I think that if you look at my kid work, it's like, oh, that's Patrick. And if you look at my adult work, it's like, oh, it's this guy or that guy. So I appreciate that.
But you
Thank
also,
you. And the great thing about summer school was, Carl Reiner was our director.
Yeah.
And our that whole storyline I had of being in love with the pregnant girl, again, a whole bunch of it got cut out because they realized, wait a minute, we can't have the pregnant girl have a love story. She just had a baby. We can't let them think that they're going to go off and have sex now. So it was just like a reconfiguring after we shot the movie.
Yeah. But you also, it's like you had, it's like the Patrick Labyorteaux type is not a type. It's like you were one way as a child, and then you became a teenager, and you became a new Patrick Labyorteaux type, and then you became a young adult, and you became a new Patrick Labyorteaux type. Then you're doing JAG, so you're this full blown, mature adult actor, and that was a whole nother type. I mean, and you say you want to work forever. I know you can. You're incredibly castable right now. Thanks, and you will be going forward. You've got the look, you just got the attitude, and of course the desire has to be there. If I, with a gun to my head and a $10 million suitcase full of cash, I don't want to do it. And that's the bottom line.
No, I mean, look, you and my brother worked together for years on Mad Dogs, and it's the exact same thing.
Yeah.
I am a blunt instrument that can go into an audition, do it, and walk away and not be affected. My brother was not that way.
Yeah.
I would imagine that you weren't that way either. It is a grind, and it's a, as professional as you want to be, and as like even as I'm saying, I'm a blunt instrument. It's still difficult to walk in and have someone go, no, we don't want you.
Right, exactly.
We don't want. You go away.
Yeah.
or you're the one we want. You're going to save this movie. It's a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
And
it is.
so I get it. Epilogue. Okay, so we're into here for the epilogue, where we plug things. Obviously, we've talked a lot about this book. I can't tell people enough to go get it when it comes out. What information can you give us about it, as far as any schedules or timelines or titles, or
Well,
is it still in the works?
Yeah, it's still in the works in the sense that my literary agent, that's such a hard word for me to say, literary agent and I are working on the final uh, edited draft of the manuscript before it goes out to publishers. And the
Great.
publishing business is notoriously slow. You think Hollywood is slow? Oh my goodness. Publishing moves at a snail's pace, and you have to hit editors at certain times of the year when they're actually doing business, because then they go on vacation or it's not a good time of year. So it's like an ongoing process. But we're close to finishing that up, and then it's going to go out the first of the year, and I'm hoping to land something in 2025 with some kind of a deal for it, because I really it's like I'm extremely proud of it. It was a labor of love. It was therapeutic, and I also think, and I just appreciate you saying how much it relates to the experience of being a child actor, because that was my goal when I sat down to write this draft. What came into my head was, I want to make a making of story. I want to write a making of story. What's the making of a child actor? And that's what part one, or I don't know if it's the title of one of my chapters or not, but at least in the book proposal we're putting out, that's how I qualify it. It's the making of a child actor, like day in and day out, as much as I could, what I went through and experienced, and whether it was good, bad, or ugly, it didn't matter. And the hard part about it, obviously, was we were referring to my father, but just to get it out there and over with. My father was an extremely insecure, domineering, narcissistic actor who was, like you pointed out, incredibly angry. Everything pissed him off. He just, it's like we couldn't watch TV without him screaming at, God damn it, I just saw him. Why is he in this and I'm not? It just was like this raging personality. And he really was very difficult for me to live with. And he was my stage father. He took me to work until I could afford to hire someone to do that, which I eventually did. But that is a part of this the story too, that I tried really, really hard not to write about, and I ended up having to. It's just like
I'm so glad you did, because again, not to give any of the story away, because you really do have to take it in as you lay it out.
Yeah.
But because I had a personal relationship with your father directly, I can comment on the stuff that I experienced.
Yeah.
And then reading your reading your viewpoint was just fascinating, because it was so, you see the end result, and then you read about your side of it. And when you say, talking about the making of a child actor, it's so integral into, I think, not only your personality, but the way that you work and how you relate to the industry. Because as much as, if you've even listened to all of this podcast, people out there, as much as you can see that Ike loves being on a team and in a crew and on a project, his dad was the opposite. It was about him and about being the center. And a lot of performers are like that, which is why there's a difference between a journeyman actor and a movie star who the project's about them and nothing else.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's
I can't thank you enough for doing this. This has been amazing. We could talk for another 5 hours and still not touch any more.
We sure could. And maybe we should do it again sometime and share our war stories, in a sense, because I'd love to. It's like I just having a chance. It's like Alcoholics Anonymous, right? You go in and everybody's like you. Well, there's no place for us to go
Actors
like that.
Anonymous.
Do just the opposite. There's no bar you can go into, and and hang out with ex-child actors and swap stories. But yeah, because there's things that I'd
You know,
like
that
to
would be a
ask you
fun
too, and it'd
we
be-
should get Moosey and a couple other guys and just have like an Actors Anonymous meeting online.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much for inviting me. This was a lot of fun. I really appreciate it, and I wish you all the best of success with this show, because I think you're doing, like I said, an excellent job, and it looks great. You're a great interviewer. It was fun. So thank you.
Right back at you. Thank you so much, Ike. And we will talk with you soon. Okay.
Okay.
Take
All
care.
right, man.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. I'm really, really glad you're here and checking out the podcast. It is an audio podcast wherever you get your podcasts. It's a video podcast over on YouTube or on Spotify or wherever you get the video ones. All of my socials are Working Actors School on TikTok, on Instagram, and on YouTube. Please check us out. If you want any information about the school, it is at workingactorsschool.com. We've got classes going on all the time. And again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.